Hello, this is Dr. Tirrell. I just wanted to give you a brief update about how the recent closures for extreme weather have impacted our course and the changes we're going to be instituting. We'll discuss this more when we return to class. It'll be on Tuesday, October the 9th, but we do want to take a look at these here so we don't have to go over all of this in class. So let me just share my screen with you really quickly here. And we can take a look at the course website. Okay, so this is the syllabus. A couple of things to be aware of. Our meeting time has been extended by 5 minutes, so it was a hybrid, so it's Tuesday to 4:50 now instead of 4:45. Excuse me. Online period obviously doesn't change because it's not measured in terms of minutes. The syllabus here, you'll notice it says elements changed due to severe weather closure are marked in red. This statement here outlines that it's not just that we have to do this stuff from the semester in the shortened calendar. We also have to make up the minutes we missed, right? So for our course, that's about 300 in-person minutes because we're talking about 75 minutes ordinarily over 4 weeks, so that's 300. And then the corresponding online periods, of course, those are measured differently because it's online, so minutes really isn't the unit. But it is a system policy, which is tied to state law, actually, that requires a certain number of instructional minutes. So in order to make this up, we'll be doing a few different things. The period length obviously is 5 minutes longer, and then a couple of days have been instituted to be classroom days, right? The fall break and reading day have been reclaimed as classroom days instead of breaks when class was canceled. But in addition to that, we're going to be, as it says, doing things such as additional outside of class activities, and we'll also be supplementing class time with individual conferences, particularly at the end of the semester. We won't have them until then, but then also supplemental instructional content delivered via video. And I'll talk about the particulars of that, but we essentially have the same calendar. We're doing the same stuff, but there'll be more things pushed outside of class activities, so it's not like additional new work. It's just that they've been pushed into different areas. And then we'll be making up time through individual conferences and video content. The way that essentially will work, and we'll look at the particulars here in a little, but we won't be able to cover everything that we would cover in a normal class because everything is compressed now. So a lot of the sort of conversations and discussion and instruction that would take place had we the time of a regular semester, that's now going to be pushed to video content. So that's essentially how we're going to make up our missing minutes. And again, we do have to do that. You can't just compress things. You have to make sure that the minute totals match. So if you look here on the syllabus, you can see where the changes are because they're marked in red. Excuse me. Been doing a lot of these recently. So you'll notice a lot of the core policies are obviously going to be the same. Late work is different because previously we did not accept, or I did not accept late work in the class. Now late work is flexible. Right? I'll make every reasonable attempt to accommodate late work because understandably everyone, students and faculty, everyone, staff, is going to be really compressed this semester. So it's not just this course, it's all of your courses will be undergoing these kinds of changes, which means time pressure is going to be significant. Because of that, due dates are more flexible. We have them, but if you need to have more time on a particular assignment, if you just let me know ahead of time and keep me in the loop, it's not a big deal. But you do want to do that in advance. You don't want to retroactively say, oh, something that was due 4 weeks ago, I just remembered that. Just keep me in the loop. But if you need extra time to finish some things, that's going to be fine. We're all under a significant crunch. The other main thing, if you scroll down here, a couple of quirks. The point total is the same. The way it's allocated is slightly different in that reading responses and reading quizzes, those are both worth 5 points. And we've had, I believe, 2 of each of those so far. You may not remember. It's been quite a while, but they both revolve around reading our textbook and either doing an in-person multiple choice quiz, of which we've done 2, or out of class, generally on Thursdays, our online period, application of reading material. And the balance here was previously different, where we had, I believe, 5 reading quizzes for a total of 25 points. And then I think it was 6 reading responses for a total of 30 points. That's been adjusted because of the way the reading is going to break down. We'll only have 1 more quiz, but the other chapters will still be reading them. They'll just take the form of reading responses. So the total is the same. It's just how they break into quizzes and responses has shifted slightly. We're doing the same assignments, and so we have the same point total. This addition here, though, this numerical total will be mediated by each student's self-assessment. See section below. What that means is, this is the section it's talking about, is that although I'm still going to be issuing numerical scores, we still have the same points and those kinds of things. And I will still be giving you feedback on your work and your drafts and those kinds of things. But additionally, each student near the end of the semester is going to prepare a self-assessment. And we'll look at what that is in specific here in just a minute. But you're going to be essentially composing a short document and then discussing that document with me in an individual meeting. We'll be having individual conferences near the end of the semester, and we'll use your assessment to discuss essentially what grade you feel is appropriate for yourself in this course, and why, based on course achievement. And I'll talk about that here in a bit, but it is based on what you've done in the class rather than the hardships you endured. Those are relevant, but those are also shared. The meaningful differentiator here is what you've done in the course. And I'll take those into account when assigning final grades. We'll look at that here in specific in just a second. But what this basically is, it's a way for you to help articulate for me an appropriate final score in this. And this isn't just coming from nowhere. This is incorporating what's sometimes called ungraded assessment, and there's informational links here. The idea is, since we have a short time remaining, you can either focus on, points, or you can focus on learning. And the idea here is, with the time we have remaining, I'd like to focus on learning and applying course concepts. And so the points changes a little bit. As I said, late work, the nature of that changes. We can adjust that, and so points don't matter quite as much there because you have flexibility. And then also we'll be doing this self-assessment where you'll have the opportunity to make up points essentially. So that's the gist of what's going on here. Those are the main changes. That late work now is much more flexible. And you'll be doing this self-assessment, which is a short document, and you'll be discussing it with me in an individual meeting. We've read about performance evaluations briefly in the textbook. Again, this was like over a month ago, but it's kind of that, although it is in no way adversarial, although usually work performance evaluations are not either. I mean, it's basically a way for you and I to discuss individually what's fair in terms of a final grade, keeping in mind that, we will have numerical scores, but that may not tell the whole story, right? So the self-assessment gives you an opportunity to tell your part of the whole story that points alone might miss. So if you go to the assignments thing here, we do have specific information about what the self-assessment is. I've kind of already said, but it's a short 2-page document that it clarifies what would be the appropriate grade for you and why, based upon class achievement rather than mitigating factors. You can mention them. I mean, they're relevant, but the thing of it is, really what we're talking about here is what you've achieved in the class holistically, right? something about your achievement that points just don't miss, or, realistically, you had to miss a couple of assignments just because we're all compressed and, you had a bunch of other stuff going on. So the points are going to miss that. This is a place where you can point out, I was still engaged in that material in these ways. I just wasn't able to catch that particular assignment, but I did these other things that I think tap into the same learning outcomes. We always do those documents at the beginning that ask that exact question, right? What learning outcomes are we addressing here? So you can use those, when you're talking about achievement. So it's a short 2-page about document. It's a way for it's a tangible thing to help us discuss. If I didn't require something written, sometimes the discussions can be very unfocused. Well, I want this grade and you should give it to me. Writing something down articulates your sort of case for why this should be. And again, this is not adversarial. It gives us a discussion framework. We'll be scheduling these individual conferences for later in the semester, and I know that's not going to be a great time. So basically, you'll just schedule an individual time with me when we're both available on campus. They're maybe 5 minutes. So we'll have a lot of availability to do those as we get closer to the end of the semester. As it said, sort of in terms of how this is going to work in your final grade, you'll notice it's not computed in the points, of course. Those are still the same, but it's basically capable of adding a full letter grade. We have 375 total points. That breaks down to about 40 points. What that means is, you can think of this as a big extra credit opportunity, right? It's a big cumulative global extra credit opportunity about the course that tells me, here's what you've done holistically, here's what you've achieved, and it's capable of bumping you up a letter grade. So if you need to let some assignments slip, or you weren't able to give them, you turned it in, but you weren't able to give it the attention it deserved just because we're all under this huge pressure, this time pressure, here's where you can frame those things, right? I meant to do these things, but I just wasn't able to because of the time pressure. We can talk about those kinds of things. That's class focused, and it can bump you up 40 points. So that's equivalent to a full letter grade. So some things you may have to prioritize, some things may have to slip in this class. This is a way to catch back up with that on the back end, right? Because I realize realistically, all students and faculty and staff are going to be in this situation, right, where you're just going to have to prioritize some things over others. This gives you a way to make up for that, right? So that's the gist of how this works. You can think of it as just a big end of semester extra credit opportunity. And the nature of it is you're ascertaining what you think is a fair letter grade for you and the reasons why. And then that can elevate you a full letter grade. That does mean, if your numerical score is an F because you don't turn in anything for the rest of the semester and you write, yes, but I deserve an A, it can't do that. And you can see how those kind of work together. I just don't have the numerical information that you've actually done anything that could only bump you up, a letter grade. So that's the best it can do. So there is a little bit of reciprocity there. It's not like it can, lift you an infinite amount. It can lift you up a letter grade, which is a huge chunk. And that should give you the flexibility to make the kind of priority decisions you're going to have to make in the remainder of the 9 weeks we have remaining in this semester. Okay, so that's that. Moving on then to the calendar. Let me just make sure I covered everything. Yeah. And I just, again, the impulse here is the point of the class is to learn. And in the compressed time we have, I want us to focus on learning, even if that means you have to let some points slip, because you can then on the back end, you can make up late work. You can, you'll be doing this to pick up points. I want us to not worry about points so much, worry about learning the stuff. And then we'll be able to a large degree, pick up the point stuff a little bit later, not to an infinite amount, but, to a healthy degree. It's putting trust in you to be a significant arbiter of your actual achievement in this class, because I simply can't stay on top of everybody the way I normally would, because everything's smashed together in a few weeks. So if you look at the calendar, there are changes here. You can see we got this whole block taken out, this whole month-long block taken out. As I mentioned, it is system policy that we do have to make up the time. We can't just only put stuff in the remaining weeks here. We actually have to make up the time. So one thing we're going to be doing is pushing some stuff that would have been in class now into out of class activities, right? If you actually look sort of at the upcoming time periods here, but these haven't changed. I haven't piled any new stuff on here. So when we meet for the first time, you'll be submitting your draft press release before we meet, and then in class we're going to be essentially looking at those drafts. Things do ramp up then. You can see, we've had to put some things together in some places where we were doing, one chapter, we are now doing two. So you want to take a look at the calendar. In the immediate future, the first day here, I haven't added anything new. But you do want to take a look at what's coming up. We will talk about this, but for example, that Thursday, the 11th there, instead of doing just the internal memo activity, you're now doing both the internal memo and the video message activity, because we have to make up time. And then, as I mentioned, we will be scheduling individual conferences for later in the semester. And because we're having to cover more material in fewer in-person meetings, stuff that we have to kind of leave aside or that gets a little bit short shrift, I'll be adding video content, which will just be like this, essentially me going over material that we just couldn't cover in person. And that'll bring us up to the minutes we need to make up. So, a good example would be things like when we do reading chapters, excuse me, sometimes we don't get to, or we won't be able to cover what was actually in the chapter. We'll do the reading response, but that'll only be part of it. We won't necessarily have an opportunity to talk at length about the chapter itself. So I'll push that into video content that you'll be able to watch. And that will, in theory, or in theory and probably practice, help you do things like complete your reading responses, prep you for your one remaining reading quiz, right? If we have video content about the chapter before you actually do those activities. Okay, so that's the gist of how things are going to play out. If you have any questions, you of course can contact me. Let me just cut back to me. There we are. So if you have any questions between now and when we resume class on Tuesday, October 9th, please just contact me by email. The big things to keep in mind, as you know, we're doing basically the same stuff. It's not like whole chunks get cut out of the syllabus. You can't really do that. We're doing basically the same stuff. There are a couple of policy changes. The big things are, one, late work. Now, if something has to be late, that's probably fine. Just let me know ahead of time and keep me in the loop. But late work is more or less fine. And then the big thing about self-assessment, right? We still are getting numerical scores. The point total is still the same. We're doing the same assignments. But you do, near the end, have this big, essentially global extra credit opportunity where, because you're going to have to be making priority decisions, there may be times when you just can't spend as much time on an assignment or be able to complete a small one or something. This will give you an opportunity to address that and say, here's what I think is a fair final grade for me, and here's why. And you can pick up, enough extra credit points to bump you up a full letter grade. Those are the main sort of policy things. Do look at the calendar just to see same stuff, but it's compressed, and that means some things are going to be pushed into video content or into out of class activities or whatever. All right, so that's the gist of it. If you have questions, please contact me. I'm excited to get back to class. The hybrids are always weird because we see each other 15 times total anyway, and now it's even fewer. So we barely know each other. It'll be interesting to get back into class. We've been out more than we've been in. So I'm excited to get started with it, and we'll figure this out. I mean, everyone's under a real pressure. We all know that, but we'll figure this out. I think things will come together. They always do. And as I say, the impulse here is to focus on learning with the remaining time we have, making that valuable from a learning standpoint. And I'm confident we'll figure out how to do that together. All right, I will see you folks next week. Contact me if you have any questions. See you then.